So Sage, let's just say the Vikings are. I think there's plenty of moves still to be made, and like there are trade rumors out there. But let's say the Vikings make no more moves that really move the needle here in free agency or via trade, and they're left with their 12 draft picks and then whatever they can get with a couple first round picks, second round pick, etc. They lose Stephon Diggs, a lot of key pieces from that defense. They have to fill holes. How good is that team right now, basically on paper? I mean, is it like an 8-8 team in your mind? Like, what is this team for you right now?
Yeah, maybe something like that, maybe worse. I mean, let's talk about the positions that they have open. Who are their starting corners right now?
Yeah.
All right, we don't know. They need a starting wide receiver. And they actually probably, they might need a third guy. I mean, they've got two guys who I look at sort of as third and fourth guys, but they need somebody who can really fly in this football team. They need that down the field guy. Diggs was a really, really good player, but if you can get two starters for him, that's a good spot. You need a defensive end. That's key. So you have four, maybe five spots that starters that they need to find. And I don't know what summer's going to look like. We'll see how all this stuff works, how much OTAs and off-season stuff and all those meetings that if they have all these draft picks, but if those guys don't have a summer, those guys don't have really an off-season,
Yep.
that's going to be hard to fill 4 or 5 starting spots with draft picks with guys who don't have a rookie off-season, right? So I don't know where this football team is going to go. And obviously, they've got Cousins on the extension. He's going to be the quarterback for the next 2 years. But do they start making some trades? Of course, they have all those picks. Do they try to make this trade with Washington and get Trent Williams, the left tackle? And how much would Washington want for him? I think that's a really interesting spot. And so there's a lot of questions on this football team, and we're getting late here in free agency. They have gotten some more cap dollars, at least by some of these letting these guys go. They were just over the cap. So they're just in a tough situation now. They need, I would say, at least 4 starters that played as well as those guys, played last year. There's some good players in there and guys, a lot of experience in those guys that have now left with Everson and obviously Stephon and these various other positions.
So, Sage, how much would you be willing to give up and surrender for a 31-year-old left tackle who's had some health problems, but at the top of his game is still good? And I think as far as tackles go, 31's not exactly ancient. What would that trade look like to you that would be a reasonable ask from Washington for the Vikings to make a deal that could take care of that left tackle position for, let's say 4 years?
I think that Washington just knows that they don't believe Trent Williams will play for them. And so the question is, what can they get in return? At some point, you got to get something.
Mm-hmm.
So if they would like to get probably something in this year's draft. So as we get closer, who has offered the biggest number and also wants to deal with giving Trent Williams, a 31-year-old tackle, a big contract. But I've seen guys like Whitworth with the LA Rams. They sort of got traded late in their career and still were good players for 3-4 years. I'd love to have a really good left tackle for the next 3 or 4 years. So, he's obviously looking for another contract, probably his last big contract, but we don't know exactly what that's going to be and because we don't really know what the trade compensation is yet. But I got to imagine Washington is going to either just move him for almost nothing or just even a mid-round pick. Because teams also know, at some point they're just going to cut him also. That's the other thing. So it's like, who wants to wait it out and who's willing to not wait it out and just go get what they need? And, do the Vikings think that's an upgrade at left tackle? And do they want that contract extension? So they're definitely a team that could always help their offensive line get better. Kirk Cousins is a really good quarterback if he has really good protection and he can stay in rhythm and be more of an executor, not a playmaker. And, having the guys on the left side, left tackle like Williams, who has played very, very well over the course of his career.
Sage, the NFL is going forward with the draft as planned, not as originally planned. It'll be sort of a TV studio event. We'll be seeing inside the homes of some of the prospects, I think, rather than them all gathering in the auditorium. But NFL GMs are saying that this thing needs to be pushed back because of the process that they go through leading up to the draft, going to these kids' pro days, the face-to-face interviews that they do. How much of the work has been done this close to the draft, and how much is still left to do for scouts and front offices? And Are we about to find out that this is as random as it seems? Is the NFL about to be exposed that for all the thought and work that goes into scouting, that at the end of the day, the NFL draft is just random?
Well, listen, the Patriots are the greatest franchise of all time because they were so genius of drafting a quarterback in the 6th round and being the greatest of all time. So, um, I think there are ways for guys to still sort of do these workouts. They're just not, the ones that you are traditionally seeing. But you can tape these guys, and they can tape their 40 times and their bench press, and they can do these different things, and I think still keep it safe, but on video, right? And there could still be a draft. I don't know what summer football looks like. That's what I'm intrigued by. I'm surprised the NFL doesn't just sort of push everything back just one more month. We'll know a lot more, or just start with 2 weeks, or something like that. So yeah, I think they should push everything back just a little bit. There's just no big hurry, and it's always nice to probably for these scouts to. It's another thing about these university workouts is let's say a school like Iowa State, they might have 2-3 guys get invited to the combine, maybe more, but there's all these other guys who are trying to make it too, and that's where teams find sometimes these guys also didn't make it to the combine. So it's a totally different deal, but the NFL is trying to sort of do business as usual, because every time you change one thing, it changes everything else, and it's a big ship, that $15 billion industry.
Hey, let me go back. Sage Rosenfels with us here for some Sage football wisdom. Mackey and Judd with Ramie on the Trent Williams front. It's such interesting fodder because it's a position of need for the Vikings. They've got at least the draft assets to make a trade, and they might even be able to swing it financially with a couple tweaks here and there. So if Stefon Diggs hadn't fallen out of favor and vice versa, if it wasn't just time for Stefon Diggs to be traded, what do you think helps Kirk Cousins more? A second-star receiver like Stefon Diggs, or a top 5 left tackle if Trent Williams is healthy like Trent Williams?
That's a heck of a question. I think the biggest difference is this. I think a receiver can step in even with a shortened offseason, shortened training camp, or whatever it might be, and play. That left tackle is a very unique position. And by the way, Trent Williams also played in his Washington offense, very similar. A lot of that zone scheme, a lot of that play action, and the bootleg type stuff. So he'll be able to step in right away, and the calls will be very similar. He came into this league at that Kyle Shanahan offense, boom, who just came from Gary Kubiak. So a lot of things are going to be, he'll be able to step in right away, and I think be very, very good in this offense. And so that's where I would think that makes more sense. And then receiver, somewhere in that draft, maybe get a young guy.
Sage, last thing, this is going to be a football question, but it's a thing I'm curious about.
Football.
And you can probably at least attempt to answer it for me. There is, at this point, and we all know that coaches grind tape constantly, right? Like they go in dark rooms and they grind tape and try and figure out what teams are doing offensively or what they can do schematically. Do you think, because there is literally for these people nothing to do now, that we are going to see things even more potentially creative? Now, the flip side to my question is practice time and implementation. But I almost expect that there's going to be coaches like McVay and stuff who just basically seclude themselves for months now because they can't go out basically, and come back in the fall when they begin play with concepts that might even be outside the scope of what we're used to seeing from guys like that.
It's a good question. I wonder, my assumption is that they're still having meetings, and they're going to have meetings. And, let's just sample up, Brian Schottenheimer, Gary Kubiak. I imagine at some point they'll have their quarterbacks, their offense, their entire offense, the groups, whatever, they will have, just like students have, designed meetings over, Zoom or, one of these apps. And there will be film work within that. There'll be homework within that. And the players, I promise you, are still out finding a way to work out in some way. Of course, not together, but guys, I'm sure are lifting or whatever they're doing. So I think there's going to be this physical side and lack of the physical cohesion together. But I would assume that these guys are in meetings probably even more, than they were before.
Sage, good talking football with you.
Football.
You guys
Stay safe out there,
think-
man.
Yeah.
Do you guys think we will have all the OTAs this summer?
No way.
Do you guys think
No.
we'll have a start on training camp like July 28th or whatever it usually starts?
I don't know. I made the prediction in our Write That Down segment last week. I think the NFL season starts without fans in the stands because they can get away with it more than like baseball, which is based on local TV revenue and local ticket revenue.
Yeah. Would you say this, though? Would you say that to get there, all the players would have to take a test?
Yeah,
basically.
I would think
Like,
so.
Our testing has to get to the point where it's 75 minutes. All the players are taking a test literally before the game or whatever, and coaches.
Yep.
And right, and they would have
Yep.
to. I mean, we'd have to get that point.
Absolutely.
Before we get to that point, there's just no chance in it. I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking out loud, I guess, and one of
No,
you guys'
I mean,
opinion on it.
And these are, think about like the four of us just kind of kicking around these. Like, think about being Roger Goodell or Rob Manfred or Adam Silver right now and figuring out.
There have to be football players right now who have this and we don't know, correct?
For sure, absolutely.
There's no way that the entire National Football League does not have this. Like
Oh,
somebody
absolutely.
or,
Yeah.
10 guys have to have this.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think the testing process makes perfect sense. And then if they all test clean, you can play.
Well, there's the other aspect of the whole thing is, and I think it's a blood test they're developing, which that you get tested to see if you have the antibodies. Now we're talking science or whatever, but if you have the antibodies of it, that you have had it, and then you basically probably won't get it again. I think is obviously the thing. So they're coming out with that type of test as well, to see if not that you have it, but that you had it, somewhere in the past, because we all have our people are like, yeah, I had a terrible, sort of flu fever thing, a month ago, or people have had these things, but they just maybe they were younger or whatever, didn't affect them as much. And so, you only can imagine how many people have had it and currently have it. But patience is going to be tough on everybody. But I think what the NFL is doing is they are going, we can do this business. We can still do this business without having to be together. You can still do the draft. You can still do meetings. You can still do these things in the off season. That's not actually football. And they just have to sort of wait it out. But it would definitely be a very, very quick and interesting training camp if they didn't have any of the OTAs this summer, especially for those rookies.
Yep, that's our football friend, Sage Rosenfels. Find him on our show every Thursday and find him on Purple Daily with Matthew Collar on Mondays and Wednesdays at 2:00. Sage, take care, man. We'll talk again next week, all right?
All right, fellas. Looking forward to next week.
All right, that's Sage Rosenfels. And by the way, Ramie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Judd and I both racking up points in the good question standings here on Mackey and Judd with Ramie during
You got
that
one?
interview.
That one must have slipped by me. I didn't hear him
He
say
got a
it.
heck of a question.
Heck of a
Oh,
question.
That's a heck of a
okay.
question.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I now have 7 on the season. Judd with 5. Ramie and Jonathan each with 3.
Collar
good
did tell me
questions.
today I asked an excellent question. Excellent. Now, I know he's a staff member, but he went to excellent
What was the question?
when I asked him a question. We were talking, it was the first edition of a new segment on Score North Live, which is Dumb It Down. We're taking
Oh, yeah, okay.
topics and subjects that we may not fully understand in the world of sports and having experts explain it to us. And Collar explained football analytics, and I asked him about how quarterbacks are measured given all the other things that have to go right for a quarterback to be successful. And he said, excellent question. Excellent question. Excellent.